So those are the kind of like the broad meat and potato employment visa consents. There is another visa that sits within the general employment policy, which is the training visa. So the idea behind the training visa is to enable a foreigner or a Chinese national to come to Hong Kong to undergo training here, acquiring special skills, knowledge, and experience not available back home. That is, the training program must impart skills, knowledge, and capability that can only be had in Hong Kong in the context of the training plan that underpins the grant of the training visa. Under the training visa, there is a maximum stay, and that is 12 months, more typically 6 months. It all depends on the training plan. The training plan is detailed to justify a 12-month limit of stay, then 12 months can be made available. Generally speaking, the visas are issued for the most part for 6 months. And if there is a requirement for 12 months, then the training plan has to be quite detailed, and you have to have a good justification as to why it's 12 months and not 6. And so it has to be receiving training, not delivering training, but receiving training, usually from the Hong Kong entity of a related party, not exclusively, but generally speaking, you know, we're looking at some sort of intercompany sort of scenario going on here, or some sort of, you know, commercial relationship that sits between a Hong Kong entity and some overseas entity that requires an employee of the overseas entity to come to Hong Kong to sort of learn what the game is all about in Hong Kong, as it were. So that's generally sort of, you know, how the receiving training dimension is covered. To get the visa, you need a very well-documented training plan that speaks to the justification. The training plan needs to explain who's going to be delivering the training. So if you've got only a 1 or a 2-man entity in Hong Kong and you're seeking to use that entity to justify a training visa, and given that the training is ostensibly going to be sort of full-time because of the nature of the visa length that you get, then the dearth of local employees to take responsibility for delivering the training can sometimes be a significant roadblock. So message here is that the bigger the entity in Hong Kong is going to be delivering the training, the easier it is to expect the Immigration Department to give due credit to the training plan, because very few full-time employees in Hong Kong are going to be spending their entire time delivering training to some trainee that's coming in to acquire certain skills. Not exclusively so. There's always an opportunity to make an argument, but I cite this as being one of the typical challenges that clients have when they are seeking to get a training visa. They just don't have enough staff to be credible in terms of how the training is going to be imparted to the trainee. It's okay for mainlanders to participate under the training visa, but once again, because we're dealing with the floodgates policy, generally the company in Hong Kong must be well established or otherwise associated with a good enterprise operating both in Hong Kong and in the mainland. Hard work getting an extension to a training visa, because when you're taking your story to get the visa in the first place, you're putting forth your training plan, which sets out in great detail exactly how the time is going to be spent. So if for one reason or another, you know, you need to, you know, seek to extend, you're going to have to justify why it wasn't anticipated that the extension was going to be called for. Training plan is generally deemed to be definitive. So this presents itself quite often in the context of, say, an initial 6-month training visa, and then they decide, the parties decide they want to stick around for another 6 months. Well, you can expect the Immigration Department to look really carefully at kind of, you know, what's going on, all things considered, to determine whether or not an extension is justified in those circumstances. If you do need, you know, an extension for a month or two for really genuine good reason, then you can sustain a claim with, facts and documents that clearly evidence the fact that you're unable to complete the training, notwithstanding, efforts to deliver exactly according to the training plan. For example, one mission critical employee that was going to be responsible for one particular part of the training was sick for 3 or 4 weeks during the period of the training plan. So basically that was sort of, things were shuffled around, but it wasn't quite exact in terms of the chronology and the sequence of how the training was going to unfold, and therefore you need to sort of cycle back to that particular part of the training plan now that the person responsible for delivering the training is back at work, and therefore needing a month or two to extend the training visa accordingly. But in any event, once you get to 12 months, they're not going to give you an extension. So you're really just talking about extensions in the realm of a training visa that was granted for less than 12 months in the first instance. Excuse me. And so an integral part of the training visa is that you can't use this visa as a stepping stone visa for the most part. That is, come get a training visa and then seek to move into an employment visa subsequently. Whenever you try to do that, the immigration department are going to look to see, what's going on. The immigration department expect that there will be an exit from Hong Kong to repatriate the skills that have been acquired during the training program. And if that doesn't happen because there's been some fundamental change in circumstances, that promotes the contention from the sponsor of the training visa to seek to get this training visa holder an employment visa, in the wake of the training having been completed, because it's not a stepping stone visa. The immigration program have a really good look at what was going on here to see whether it's justified, all things considered, for the training visa holder to be enabled to shift into an employment visa. And generally they're independent variables. So you've trained, you've learned something here, those skills have got to be expatriated. If there is a new business need that's sort of arisen in the organization that it just so happens that the training visa holder is perfect for, and the local market for those skills has been tested unsuccessfully, and the compensation is broadly commensurate with market rates, and all the rest of that good stuff is in play, then you might get a result. But to look at it as a sort of, we'll get you in training visa first, and then we'll get in employment visas fraught with difficulty. So be aware that change of status is very difficult if you're going to be working for the same employer ostensibly under an employment visa once your training visas come to expire. Interestingly, though, if the training visa holder finding himself in Hong Kong gets a job offer materialized in his life from a different party, then it is possible to apply for an entry employment visa in those circumstances. And the fact that you're not going to be repatriating the training skills, the skills that you've been trained for, won't necessarily serve as a barrier to being able to procure an employment visa, assuming that you can pass the employment visa provability test separate from whatever it was that kind of got you the training visa in the first place. Now, there is a version of the training visa for interns, which is a lot easier. Generally, it's all about acquiring skills as an intern. The applicant need not have graduated from university. The skills as an intern that are going to be acquired need to relate in some tangible sense to the affairs of the sponsoring business that's giving the intern the opportunity to get the training visa, to experience the internship. Generally, there's no requirement to show that local interns have been overlooked in favour of the foreign national intern. Generally, that's the case. And then the intern can get a training visa on the basis that they can demonstrate that they have sufficient funds to be able to complete the internship in Hong Kong. Whether there is funds going to be extended from the sponsor or otherwise, generally speaking, That's what the immigration department are looking for. If you are an existing student seeking an intern visa, if you're a recent graduate, the immigration department generally expect to see that there's a measure of compensation from the sponsor to the intern to basically cover their costs of the internship in Hong Kong, because Hong Kong ain't cheap. So that's the training visa and how all that works.